Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Today's guest, Mitch Light, as we talk Vanderbilt football. This show is sponsored by the Well Coffee House, which is a Nashville area coffee house that provides fresh roasted coffee, along with house-made pastries, breakfast and lunch offerings. 4 locations to serve you in the Nashville area. Those are in Brentwood, Green Hills, downtown, and Bellevue. You can find more information at the website. That is wellcoffeehouse.org. The Well Coffee House, where coffee changes lives. We thank our co-sponsor, Wellspire, Nashville's Learning and Development Center, which is located in the Gulch. Today's news presented by Sutherland and Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt in any type of accident, call Taylor or Russell at 615-846-6200. See what your rights are and if they can help. Well, final from Saturday, Georgia 30, Vanderbilt 6. Commodores fall to 0-1 and go to Purdue next Saturday. Today's guest line presented by Boll and Branch, started by Vanderbilt graduates Scott and Missy Tannen. I've slept on their sheets for years. They are amazing. They are fair trade certified. That means they're made under safe conditions by men and women, treated and paid fairly. Once you get the sheets, try the mattress. That was voted best mattress of 2018. Go to bollandbranch.com. That is spelled B-O-L-L. Enter the promo code Vandy. Get $50 off your first set of sheets. Mitch Light joins us now. He's the executive editor at Athlon Magazine. He's the sideline announcer for Vanderbilt football. Mitch, thank you for joining us today.
Glad to be here, Chris. Hope you're having a good Labor Day.
I am. Let's start with college football. It was a crazy and entertaining weekend. You have a historical perspective on these things. The amount of Power 5 teams that were upset, I'm thinking Tennessee, Missouri. Was this some sort of historic weekend in terms of just the magnitude of upsets? Where does this rank?
Yeah, that's difficult to put in perspective. It seems like we say that a lot. When you've got 130 teams and pretty much all of them, I guess all of them but Miami and Florida, I guess maybe Hawaii and Arizona didn't play either. You're going to have some crazy results. But yeah, there were seemingly more just head-scratching results. I think there was only one FCS over FBS, and that was Central Arkansas beating Western Kentucky, but a lot of G5 over Power 5, obviously in the SEC. The Tennessee result was stunning. Very surprising about Missouri because Wyoming has not been a good offensive team. For a weekend that only had one real marquee matchup, the Oregon, it was still very entertaining. Iowa holding on to beat Iowa in 3 overtimes. That was fun to watch. So, yeah, it was, you get just a typical college football Saturday where there's just a lot of wild things going on.
Well, I watched some of the Missouri-Wyoming game because my nephew plays. Of course, I was busy covering Vanderbilt in Georgia, so I was limited. But a lot of that was big plays, and like Missouri is about to score a touchdown, and the fumble recovery goes the other way. It was a lot of high-leverage plays, which is usually the key to upsetting a team in that situation.
Yeah, I know. I was busy with the Vanderbilt game, but Kelly Bryant, I know you missed a couple. You had great stats, but missed a couple big throws, had a couple big turnovers, like you mentioned. That's what made the Tennessee game so surprising. I mean, I know Tennessee had some turnovers, especially the first play of the game, but there was nothing really fluky about that. I've rewatched some of it, and I've read a lot about it. Georgia State was better at the line of scrimmage, and they beat them. Like, you felt like you didn't – the way you explained the Wyoming game, it might be like if they play that game, again, with the same circumstances, Missouri wins if there's not those, weird turnovers. But I don't think that's necessarily the case in the Georgia State-Tennessee game.
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in Knoxville because that is a culture that when it goes wrong, it just eats coaches alive.
Yeah, I mean, but you have a different situation this time. You've got Phil Fulmer, who made the hire. It's his own guy. It's not an athletic director that the Tennessee fans can feel like they can run off, so to speak. No one's running Phil Fulmer off. So we can talk about hot seat and all that, but I think it's Fulmer's guy, and he's going to be patient with him.
You're probably right about that. Well, let's talk Vanderbilt for a minute. I was thinking this going into the game, just with the unusual situation along the offensive line, with the new starter, with the opponent, with the way that matchup went down. I was just thinking it's going to be really hard for me to change my mind about this team on the whole. I was thinking that going into the game. I think that when we found out that Sage Young wasn't going to play, which I didn't know about, when we found out that Sean McMorrow wasn't available, which I didn't know about it, I think that reinforced it even more in my mind. And I do think differently about this team in some ways. I don't know if I think that on the whole, this is a different team in terms of season success. Now, I think there may be some exceptions to that if injuries continue, and I think that was a problem Saturday. But on the whole, I don't know that I came away surprised on the net. Now, the defense was a little better in some ways than I thought. The offense was worse than I thought, but I think there's some remedies for that there. Did you change your mind fundamentally on what this team is based on what you saw Saturday?
No, not really. And it's difficult. And like you said, you can go into this saying, we realize the challenge that Vanderbilt has. Georgia might, they might end up being the best team in the country. Who knows? They're good enough to win a national championship. So you almost have to be disciplined as a, observer not to let that change your mind. I mean, of every, Duke played Alabama on a neutral field. There's very few teams that, Georgia Tech played Clemson, very few teams that had as stiff of a test as Vanderbilt did. And the matchup was just really bad, like you talked about. The offensive line, which was an issue before the season, was missing 2 starters and then another guy who might have been plugged into the starting position. So difficult to judge the offense. I thought they had a pretty good game plan. Initially Riley Neal getting the ball out quickly. That's why he had a high completion percentage. Obviously, they had trouble getting anything downfield. I thought actually Keyshawn Vaughn ran the ball well. You look up at the end of the day, he goes, averages almost 5 yards a carry against a really good defense. So I kind of agree. If I'm doing my quote grades, I'd say the defense performed better than I expected, and the offense maybe a little bit worse. So I would agree. I thought there's some bright spots defensively. I think obviously when you give up 8 yards a carry, you can't say the run defense was good, but they did some good things in short yardage. I thought Deshaun Jerkins stepped in, the redshirt freshman, for Frank Coppett, and did a really nice job, made some big plays there. You can argue that Georgia didn't have to do much offensively after they got a 21-0 lead. I get that too, but you've also seen a lot of games where teams get a 21-0 lead and it becomes 42-0. So not trying to sugarcoat anything, but I agree that, I think all assessments of this team, I know this is kind of boring, but you kind of, the way I'm looking at it, I'm going to wait till after week 4. Or the 4th game. Two SEC games against 2 of the top probably 5-6 teams in the country, but you got a road game against Purdue and then a home game against Northern Illinois. We'll kind of see where the team is after that.
Well, I don't think Georgia really took its foot off the gas in that game. I did not understand why it still had Jake Fromm in the ball game, throwing late when the game was well in hand.
It was almost like they wanted to prove that they could throw a touchdown pass, and they didn't.
Yeah.
Their backup quarterback situation is not good. I can see if they're just handing the ball off while you keep him in there. But if they threw the ball some, then you never know. If an offensive lineman misses an assignment, and then boom, their season's over if Jake Fromm goes down.
Yeah, the technical term for that, I think, is stupid.
Yeah, could be. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that Georgia, they maybe have gotten a little more vanilla until the very end where they started to throw the ball there. So, I've had some people, you can weigh in this too, ask me about should they have switched quarterbacks earlier or should they have switched quarterbacks at all? And I said no. I mean, I think they made the decision. I mean, I know they made the decision about a week and a half ago. They might have really known all along or thought for 2 or 3 weeks that Riley Neal's their guy. And I think that you've got to give him as many snaps as possible and let's see what he can do. And so I had no problem with them keeping Riley Neal in the game until the very end.
It's funny. I watch our message board and I'm watching people's takes through the game, and message boards are interesting because a lot of times there's people you respect that have completely opposite opinions. Some of it was, well, Riley Neal had no chance with their offensive line with the bad snaps. And some of them were saying, well, he's terrible and they need to switch and what were they thinking and those things. It was interesting to watch the way that it played out. I would probably need to go back and watch a little bit more to make up my mind, which I've not gotten a chance to do yet. But I think it was interesting to see the split of opinion there. But I will say this, there was some question from what I've heard privately about whether the best quarterback won the job. And I think if that's the case, I think that, look, the Purdue game ahead is a winnable game, and it's a game that they need to win if they can. I think that it's fine giving him another half, but if he continues to struggle, that might be one of those where I don't know if it's fair to say you need to make a change, but that's something I'm watching.
And I don't want to contradict what I just said there, but I think maybe, unless Riley Neal just has a great game against Purdue, at some point you want to give Deuce Wallace some real snaps because he hasn't had any in his career. I mean, he's played mop-up duty. He's never really had a chance to lead a drive when it matters. And I don't want to, cliche the term gamer, a guy who's a better game player and all that. But, I mean, just think of, Riley Neal's circumstances. It's his first game. He's playing against a defensive line like that. And for the most part, after a certain point, he's worried about every snap. So he's worried about the snap. He's worried about the offensive line. It just was not ideal circumstance. I'm not one of these like, oh man, terrible schedule, bad luck playing Georgia. Hey, you're going to play them sometime. Get it out of the way. That's kind of my thinking. But of all the Vanderbilt teams we've seen in recent years, this might have been one that really could have benefited from opening the season with a non-conference game to work out some things. But that's not possible. It didn't happen. So you just got to deal with it. But hey, like I said, they are done with the most talented team on the schedule, and they'll be done with the second most talented team on the schedule in 2 weeks.
Well, here's the other thing, and I'd have to go back and look this up. Sometimes players just have a bad night, and maybe that's what it was. I mean, you go back and look at Kyle Shermer. Kyle used to have a clunker or two of a game in the middle of the year, so I guess it's also possible to say maybe he just had a random bad game. I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's something worth bringing up.
Yeah, I thought he missed one throw. I'd have to go back and watch the whole game. The kind of the crossing pattern to Kalijah Lipscomb on the first drive of the third quarter where he just missed him. And that would have been nice momentum gaining first down and stuff. Other than that, there weren't many where I was like, wow, that was open or that was there, so it's just, it's difficult. Obviously they have their own way of evaluating the quarterbacks and they'll do that. But I didn't walk away from that game because thinking, wow, he missed a lot of throws.
Biggest surprise, hands down, the secondary. It played pretty well, I thought, with the eye test. Not just that, but Pro Football Focus grades, which we put on our site. All the secondary basically graded out pretty well. Deshaun Jerkins was kind of the star of the night in a lot of ways. Had a big night, had that fumble recovery. I think he's going to be playing for Frank Coppett for a while. So I think that's one thing that you walk away from feeling better about.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we talked about. We thought, well, that was the question. You're losing your best two players in the secondary, in Wiley and obviously Jawan Williams, but you've got a lot more bodies. You have a lot more SEC caliber players back there. That was at least my opinion heading into the season. So I think what they lose in Jawan Williams, they may bring more bodies. So I agree. Again, someone will counter and say, well, Georgia didn't test them that much because they ran the ball so well. I get that. Purdue, they'll have a game plan, I'm sure, for Rondell Moore, who's one of the shiftiest. But I'm with you. And Chris, I interviewed Jerkins after the game as the player of the game, and you never know how, redshirt freshman, I doubt he's ever spoken to the media since he's been at Vanderbilt. So, especially after a loss, it was like, hope this goes well. But he was great. So, he's a really sharp kid and played well. And obviously, you don't want to see Coppett go down, but that's a position where they clearly have some quality depth.
I'm going to go ahead and get to the mailbag, which is sponsored by Vanderbilt fan Josh Minton, an independent insurance agent operating out of Brentwood. Looking for a one-stop shop to take care of your insurance needs? Josh has you covered. Call him 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com. Follow him on Twitter at Joshua Minton HQ or at facebook.com/JD Minton HQ. He's my insurance agent. Give him a try. Tell him you heard about it here. Colombiano Door says, besides the obvious issues on the offensive line, is there a reason we didn't see more shots downfield from offensive coordinator Jerry Godowski?
I think those were the issues. I think the game plan clearly early on was a lot of quick hitters, try and get the ball out in space. I think they made more of a conscious decision to try to go downfield in the second half when they were down, and a lot of times they just couldn't get the time, so couldn't get the protection, and our guys couldn't get open. So. I think it was just as simple as trying to come up with a game plan that would, cover up the weakness, the issues on the offensive line, and that was it. Just try to have max protect as much. When you max protect, you can't have many guys out for a route, and if that guy doesn't get open, then you're kind of screwed.
He wants you also to compare the team afterwards compared to the Alabama blowout a couple of years ago.
Completely different situation. I thought morale was fine after the game. I'm in the locker room after the game. I don't like to speak to that too much because it's, I'm fortunate to be in there for my post game duties and stuff like that. But I'll just say that I think that it was one game. No one was shell shocked by any stretch. It was disappointment. Obviously, they want to win every game. They want to play better. But I don't walk away from that concerned at all about like the morale of the team or defeated, anything like that. And by no stretch.
And Arbador wants to know the grades you would give the Vanderbilt position groups.
I guess I give the running backs a B or B plus because, like I said earlier, Keyshawn Vaughn ran the ball hard. He made some guys miss. He made yards after contact. Other than that, on offense, it's hard to give any group a really good grade because they had trouble moving the ball. So, whatever you want to give, a C across the board, whatever. And defensively, I think we talked about, give the secondary a pretty good grade. I've never really given position grade, so I'm kind of, so I guess you the secondary a B, and then the other groups, I don't know, B minus or a C. When the other team does get that many yards and they run for whatever they did, it's hard to give them really good grades. But I think as a whole, I thought the defense played maybe better than I thought it would. I think there's definitely signs of improvement from last year.
Mr. Vandy says, do you think high snaps from center kept Riley Neal from ever getting into any kind of a groove?
I think it has to have been an issue. And I've never played quarterback, never played obviously at that level. But when you're worried about that defensive line and the snaps, it has to be an issue. And it's funny, Bruno Reagan tweeted something this morning about it as a former center. He basically said it's fixable. It was his first game, Grant Miller's first game. I don't know if the jitters were involved, but I would agree that of all things from an offensive line, that better snaps are fixable. But with all of what was going on, it did not help that Riley obviously had to be concerned about where the snap was.
Woody VU66 asks, the defense played hard against Georgia, but Purdue is a completely different animal. Do you see anything in the pass rush or secondary that makes you think Vanderbilt can slow down that Purdue offense?
I watched the Purdue game. I don't know if you did, and at least in the early going, they treated Rondell Moore like it was a little league team. I don't mean this like negatively, but it was like a little league team, and they had the best player in the league. So like they're going to give or youth Pop Warner, whatever football league, and the first 5 of the first 6 plays went to him, I believe, and he got his helmet knocked off twice, so he had to come out of the game. Now I've got this. I've been charting some box scores, so I can look right now. Rondell Moore had 11 catches for 124, and I think he had 3 carries. So he caught like 4 passes right off the bat, so only 7 more. But they're a different, like Woody says, they're a different styles, and it's interesting. Derek Mason's faced the Jeff Fromm offense twice and did a really good job the first time, and not as good job the second time. As I've often said, that with the Vanderbilt Western Kentucky series, Western Kentucky won in that. Thought Vanderbilt should have won that game. Vanderbilt won in Bowling Green, and I thought Western Kentucky should have won that game. So they've got a really good tight end as with Hopkins, the Nashville kid there too. So the quarterback Sindelar is good. He's prone to mistakes. That's kind of why he didn't win the job over the last 2 years. Mistakes late in that game. So I think there's going to be no comparison Georgia's offensive line to Purdue's offensive line. So I think they'll do some things to get after Sindelar and try to force him to make some mistakes. But they're going to have a game plan for Moore. He will be, he's kind of like that Deebo Samuel type player, but he's just better. So that you cannot let him, just get the ball in space because he makes anybody miss. We saw what he did to Ohio State last year.
This one from 96 Door. After watching the replay of the Georgia game, it looked like Jared Pinkney may have suffered his injury, possibly a head injury on the kickoff return team. Why does the coaching staff put starters on kickoff and kickoff return when these are the plays that often lead to injury? It says a couple years ago, Ralph Webb was on the kickoff team. Surely one of the other tight ends can fill that role.
I'm not just going to sit here and defend the coaches, but you hear a lot of times say they're better players on special teams because they're the better players. I get the theory of not having guys, but it's not like that they have a ton of tight end depth. And I'm going to be honest, I don't really study who's on special teams, so I can't sit here and tell you, like, is Gavin Schoenwald or Brett Bresnahan, should those guys have been there? They might have been on that unit. So I specifically didn't see the play where he got hurt. In a vacuum, you can sit here and say, yeah, Jared Pinkney should not be on kickoff return, but I think he's been on his whole career. He was a vital member of the offense last year, and I believe he played special teams. So it's unfortunate. I don't know if there's more on kickoffs than there are during the regular course a play. It just happened. It could have happened on any play.
Mitch, we had to cut the show a little short today because you've got a fantasy football draft. Anything else that's worth discussing that we didn't get to before I let you go?
Let me think about that. By the way, my fantasy draft will not go well. I can guarantee you that. So
don't draft Andrew Luck. There's my tip.
Yeah. Nope. I got inside sources. He's coming back, Chris. So
go for it then.
Yes. You know, it was interesting, you know, talking a little bit about the offensive line. You know, Dan Dawkins, he was a guy that, you know, probably didn't get many snaps at guard until the last few weeks when they realized they had a hole there. So I was kind of, you know, that was interesting to see him out there. You know, Demitri Moore did not get the start, didn't play much in the first quarter, played a lot. I think for the second, third quarter, I didn't really pay as much attention to the fourth quarter, but he had a lot of snaps in the second and third quarter. I don't know if they were just trying to send a message or if he was banged up or what, but that to me was interesting there. I thought, was it Davion Davis, the freshman nose tackle? He was in quite a bit after the first quarter, I believe, and I thought he played pretty well. He was in on some of the, you know, some of those defensive stops on short yardage in the third and fourth quarter. So I thought that was a good sign. We thought we'd see him play. So yeah, just big picture. I just try to put this one in perspective. Don't walk away from this feeling any necessarily worse than I did. It would have been great to see them do what they did offensively against Georgia last year. You know, they go to Athens and 4 drives over 50 yards in the first quarter, didn't really punch it in the end zone, but moved the ball. But I have a feeling we're going to be seeing this Georgia team in the college football playoffs.
The Demitri Moore situation, I'm not saying it's what it was. I have no inside information, but it almost seemed like a 1-quarter suspension. That was one of the things on the depth chart that I laughed at when I saw that he was listed as second teamer. I thought, well, at no point last year or in the spring or in the fall did he seem like a second teamer. And then he comes in, I think, the first defensive snap of the second quarter after not playing any in the first quarter.
Yeah, that's a good observation. I didn't realize it was the first series. And that stuff happens a lot. I remember one game, I forgot it was at Texas A&M, one of Vanderbilt's really good cornerbacks at the time. Who would have been in 2000 when Vanderbilt I can't think of his name, but you know, it was one of those things where he literally didn't play the first play of the game, and he was standing right next to the defensive backs coach, and went in the second play of the game. It was just, and I asked afterwards, and it was just sort of like coach's decision, one of those things. So suspend, you know, just making a statement. One play is different than 1 quarter, but some things go on. Evidently, Georgia had some suspensions too. The guys didn't play in the first quarter, but you know, even with the media everywhere and all this information out, schools are able to keep that out away from the public.
There's no way to send a message like making you miss 1 snap.
Right. That was funny. I got a kick out of that. I'm trying to think who would have been a starting cornerback under Franklin in 2013.
Andre Howe started on that team.
It was Andre Howe.
Yeah.
I remember because I think I asked Bob Shoup after the game, and he just made sort of like, not my call, coach's decision. So, but, you know, I'm sure Andre Howe's a much better person now because he was suspended or missed 1 snap in the Texas A&M game.
James was a real disciplinarian.
Yeah, you know.
Let's say that in jest.
we don't need to rehash that.
No, we don't. That's a whole other podcast. Mitch, thank you for joining us. Where can people find you on Twitter?
At Athlon. Our college basketball magazines will be out soon this week, so which is crazy enough, but actually I guess practice starts in October. So that's it. Pretty much looking forward to heading up to Purdue. Never been to West Lafayette, and probably will never be back after this weekend.
Hey, thank you, Mitch.
All right, take care, Chris.
He is Mitch Light. I'm Chris Lee. Thank you for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast.